For centuries, scholars believed that the original people of the Caribbean were simply a branch of a small South American tribe, perhaps peaceful islanders living quiet lives until Columbus and European powers wiped them out. But recent genetic research, published in journals like Nature and Science, has completely overturned that long-standing belief. At the heart of this shifting narrative is one woman, a Taino woman, whose 1,000-year-old DNA, discovered in Preacher's Cave in the Bahamas, has opened a genetic window into the true identity of the Caribbean's first people. Her genome doesn't just confirm a connection to the Arawakan-speaking groups of South America, it also carries traces of ancient human species like the Denisovans and Neanderthals, clues that take us deep into the forgotten prehistory of South America and even as far as Panama. The Caribbean, a vast sea dotted with over 700 islands, was once thought to be among the last regions settled by the Americas' early humans. But evidence now shows that dramatic changes took place there long before Columbus arrived. According to modern DNA analysis, the first Caribbean settlers, who arrived from Central or South America 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, were nearly wiped out not by Europeans, but by a second wave of newcomers from South America more than 1,000 years earlier. This wave of migrants, known as the Ceramic Age people, set off from the northeastern coast of South America about 2,500 years ago. These were farmers and pottery makers, culturally connected to Arawakan-speaking tribes. As they traveled from island to island, they gradually displaced the original inhabitants, likely through disease, conflict, and competition. Only in remote places like western Cuba did some of the earlier forager groups survive, and even then only until around 900 years ago. The DNA evidence based on over 250 ancient skeletons makes this pattern clear. These remains came from sites in Venezuela, the Bahamas, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. At the center of this discovery stands the Taino woman. Her DNA was recovered from a tiny bone inside the ear, one of the few places where genetic material can survive in hot, humid climates. That DNA, remarkably intact, gave researchers an almost complete picture of a Taino individual, a rare and precious glimpse into the past. Her genome didn't show signs of isolation or inbreeding. Instead, it reflected a thriving, healthy population, genetically linked across multiple islands. In other words, the Taino people were not a small, scattered group. They were part of a large, interconnected civilization. Archaeological discoveries back this up. Tools, pottery, and other artifacts were traded widely between islands. Using methods developed by the Reich Lab, scientists estimated that the effective population of Eleuthera Island was around 1,600 individuals, and that means the total population was likely 3 times higher, since not everyone contributes genetically to the next generation. For a 320 square mile island, that points to a strong and vibrant society. This wasn't a culture in decline, it was mobile, resilient, and deeply connected. The same genetic techniques were applied to Hispaniola and Puerto Rico, while old Spanish records claimed populations in the millions. DNA models suggest that each island had between 10,000 and 50,000 people before European contact. These lower numbers challenged the exaggerations made by colonial-era chroniclers, but they don't make the devastation of colonization any less tragic. If anything, they highlight it even more. Today, in Puerto Rico, most people still carry 10 to 15% Native American DNA, living proof that the Taino people were never completely lost. Their legacy doesn't live only in blood. Their traditions, beliefs, music, and farming practices still echo throughout Caribbean life. This genetic continuity is a powerful reminder that their story was never truly erased. But there's a painful side to this story, too. The earliest wave of settlers, known as the Archaic Age people, disappeared almost entirely. Their memory was never preserved in oral traditions or early European accounts. Their story was buried quite literally in the bones. The Ceramic Age expansion wasn't a peaceful migration. In many places, earlier communities were completely replaced or absorbed to the point that their DNA vanished. This early conquest, driven by disease, violence, and dominance, is a chapter of Caribbean history that has long been ignored. Interestingly, in Western Cuba, some archaic communities seem to have survived up to 900 years ago, hinting at more complex relationships, possibly peaceful coexistence, isolation, or trade that remain to be explored. Yet even that seems modest compared to what came next. In 2023, scientists analyzing ancient DNA from Panama, Uruguay, and northeastern Brazil found something astonishing: traces of Denisovan DNA. Denisovans were an ancient human species, closely related to Neanderthals, whose genetic legacy was believed to be limited to places like Siberia, Tibet, and Southeast Asia. So how did their DNA end up in South America? The answer may lie in a migration that took place over 40,000 years ago. A population carrying Denisovan DNA, possibly from interbreeding in Asia or Southeast Asia, must have crossed into the Americas through Beringia and settled deep into the continent. The fact that this DNA persisted for tens of thousands of years and still appeared just 1,500 years ago suggests it was a major event, not a minor trace. Even more puzzling was the presence of an Australasian genetic signal in ancient Panamanian remains DNA, related to the people of Papua New Guinea and Australia. This shocking discovery raises the possibility that a group of ancient humans, somehow related to Australasians, may have island-hopped across the Pacific and reached the Americas by sea. And the fact that this signal isn't found in ancient North American remains makes the mystery even deeper. Were there undocumented coastal migrations? Did isolated groups reach the Americas before the last ice age, only to be absorbed or wiped out? It's entirely possible that the Taino woman's ancestors carried the echoes of these long-lost voyages, that her DNA, like the others, was shaped not just by Arawakan island hoppers, but by deep ancestral journeys stretching all the way back to Asia. These revelations don't just offer scientific intrigue, they redefine identity, resilience, and the complexity of the human story. The Caribbean was never a remote, disconnected place. It was a hub, a crossroads of migration, innovation, and survival. The native people of the Caribbean weren't passive victims of history. They were builders of it, travelers, traders, creators. The Taino woman buried in a Bahamian cave could never have known that her bones would carry the legacy of her people through centuries of colonization. And yet, through her, we now see a Caribbean world rich in motion, memory, and meaning. A world where ancient foragers, seafaring farmers, and ghostly human ancestors all collide. And where their descendants still breathe, still live, and still carry the flame. History once claimed the native peoples of the Caribbean vanished, but DNA is rewriting that narrative, strand by strand, and revealing a far older, deeper, and more beautiful truth.